Okay, so I just had a really interesting experience. I'm minding my own business, sitting in my office, doing my work, and the Vivek for president, their campaign called and said, he's in a town hall meeting. Would you like to ask a question? I said, sure, why not? And so I waited my turn, and then I got to ask a question. So I asked about Ukraine. I asked what his position was, and I tried not to tip my hand about which direction to go, just saying I'm a Republican. So here's what happened.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for joining this town hall with presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy. Now, please get your name.
Hi, my name is Darren.
Darren?
Yep.
What's your question today, Darren?
I want to know about his stance on Ukraine.
Okay. So this is an issue he's very passionate about. I'm going to finish logging this and merge you back in the call, and he should be able to get to your question here shortly.
All right. Thank you very much.
First book. Next on the live line is Darren. Darren, you are on live with Vivek. Darren, please ask Vivek your question.
Yes, sir. I've read your book. I'm as Republican as they make them. I have a question about Ukraine and long-term what your vision is for Ukraine. So 6 out of the 9 candidates are very clearly for Ukraine. And then there's you, and then there's Trump, and I'm not exactly sure where Governor DeSantis is on it. Can you tell us clearly what your vision is for how you would deal with what could become a very dangerous situation?
Yes, I'll tell you, and you're right, you've done your homework. The entire Republican field is mostly on the same side as Joe Biden to continue supporting aid and continuing military engagement. The only 2 candidates who have said that they are opposed to that are myself and Donald Trump. Ron DeSantis' position is unclear to me because he's gone back and forth several times on it. But Trump and I were the only candidates who came out on the side of saying that we would support ending the war. Trump said that he would do it in 24 hours, but has not stated any details as to how. I'm going to give you my detailed vision of exactly how I will end the war.
Okay.
Here's how we'll do it. We'll negotiate a deal with Putin that achieves an important American objective: end the Russia-China alliance. The China-Russia alliance, they're in a treaty with one another. That's why China is now coming to Russia's aid. The China-Russia alliance is the single greatest military threat that we face today. Russia's nuclear stockpile combined with China's economy and their navy, and by the way, we depend on that Chinese economy, that's the real military threat. So what I would do is I would freeze the current lines of control. I would further make a commitment that NATO will not admit Ukraine to NATO. Those are big concessions to Putin. But in any deal, everyone has to get something out of it. That's what Putin gets out of it. But we get something bigger in return because I will require that Vladimir Putin exit his military treaty and alliance with China, and further that Putin removes his nuclear weapons from Kaliningrad, the region of Russia that borders Poland, as well as to remove any military presence in the Western Hemisphere, including Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua. I would also normalize economic relations with Russia so that he has no reason to depend on China. And the beauty of this plan is that not only does that secure peace in Ukraine and save us further money, instead of securing somebody else's border halfway around the world, I think we should use our own military resources to secure our own border in this country. Not only does it do that, but it also is the best way of deterring Xi Jinping from going after Taiwan while avoiding war. Why is that? Xi Jinping currently thinks that, if Russia's in his camp, the U.S. won't want to go to war with 2 different allied nuclear superpowers at the same time. Well, now if Russia's not in China's camp, that game changes dramatically for him. And Taiwan is more important than Ukraine because Taiwan produces the semiconductors that power our modern way of life, including the very phone that I'm talking to you from, for example. So I know that was a long answer, but the details matter. Foreign policy and our role as commander-in-chief and keeping Americans safe, that's the top job of the next U.S. president.
What happens to...
And I think it is a bad decision on Biden's part, and it's a bad decision for most of the Republican Party to support it as well, to take us closer to nuclear war with Russia, when in fact we can end the war not just in a sense of saying, hey, end the war and move on, not just about saving the money, that's a nice benefit, but also advancing an important American strategic interest of disbanding the Russia-China alliance.
What happens to the people of Ukraine?
In either political parties talking about it, I understand these issues deeply, And I think that negotiating those deals in a trustworthy manner is exactly how we secure peace, save money, save American lives, and most importantly, advance actual American interests.
I might be
I'm a George Washington America First conservative, which I think is a little bit deeper than you might even hear from others who are opposed to the Ukraine war.
What happens to the people of Ukraine?
*3 on your phone to ask Vivek Ramaswamy a question. And a friendly reminder, please stay on the line with us for the duration of this call, and you're going to be automatically entered into a drawing to win one of 10 signed copies of his first book, Woke Inc.
Okay, so they apparently can't hear me at this point. So what happened was I asked Vivek about Ukraine, and after I asked the question, he went on and I was muted. I was going to ask what about the people of Ukraine? He clearly is not in the camp of being pro-Ukraine. So both Donald Trump and Vivek are not the kind of candidates that you want if you want to support Ukraine. Okay, so I have some thoughts that I want to share with you about what just happened. And the first thing is, I want to address the question, hey, did he know that you were recording this and going to be putting it on YouTube? No, but he's doing this in a town hall forum where he wants as many people to hear his policy positions as possible. So as much as he probably doesn't like that I'm sharing this with you, I'm posting this on YouTube. Anybody interested in Vivek and Ukraine can see what his position is, and I think that's perfectly fair for a political candidate of any stripe. Okay, first thing that he did was differentiate himself from Biden, and this is what Republicans have to do. They have to differentiate themselves from Biden, but you don't just differentiate by saying, well, he's this, I must be the opposite. There are other candidates, Pence and Haley and Senator Scott, who are all pretty much the same as Biden, the way that he described it, but they're not. They have a very different position on all kinds of other things, and even on how to prosecute the war, or how effectively Biden has prosecuted the war. He said that Trump and himself were the only two, and he was squishy about DeSantis, which gives me some hope that DeSantis might actually come over to the other side. Now, Vivek also was talking about negotiating a deal with Putin and ending the Russian-China alliance. I'm not sure that I believe he can actually create this deal. I don't know how he thinks he's going to enforce that deal or whatever. I think he's right that this Russian and China alliance is a legitimate threat. It is a big, powerful threat, or could have been. I think it's less of a threat now after China has seen what's happened in Ukraine to Russia. But his answer was to freeze the current borders, which I think is absurd. He said NATO will not admit Ukraine. I think that's absurd. And he's going to normalize relations with Russia. I think that's also absurd. Now, he's welcome to his own opinion. I just think for a pro-Ukrainian position, from that point of view, this is not your guy. Okay, and I know that there are people on the other side that are listening to this, and this will be their guy. I'm trying to be as fair as I can to Vivek in the process. I actually like a lot of his other policy positions, but this one's just wrong. And from my vantage point, he says this is going to, by doing these things, he will deter President Xi. No, President Xi will be deterred by seeing Putin bloodied in Ukraine. That's what will deter Xi from getting antsy about trying to take Taiwan. He also said Taiwan was more important than Ukraine. I think there are 40 some odd million Ukrainians who would beg to differ with that, as would I. It's not that Taiwan's unimportant, but this is where the action is right now, and you have to defend Ukraine. Otherwise, something else could go very wrong with Taiwan. And he said we can end the war and advance American interests. And I don't think that that's the proper way to advance American interests. So that's just my take on it. You can tell me what you thought below. One last thing. He talked about being a George Washington American First Republican. Okay, what does that mean? So George Washington, in his farewell address, talked about beware entangling alliances. He wants to be more isolationist. American First is often kind of code for, now I'm American First, but I also think we have to play in the world sandbox because this is where we are. If you want to be a leader, you actually have to be involved. I'm not an internationalist. That's not where I am. But I've been called all kinds of things that are surprising to me. You internationalist. I am not an internationalist. But we're part of a connected world, and we have to realize that. The George Washington, American First isolationist, or American First candidate, it means that he's an isolationist and wants to. He talked about the Monroe Doctrine. He wants to be an isolationist, and I don't know that you can enjoy the benefits of free trade around the world unless you're willing to enforce it and keep bad people from doing bad things. And that's just where I am. Okay, I hope that was helpful to you. Thank you for your time, and thank you for listening. If you're not familiar with me, I do daily updates on Ukraine. Please subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow.